I'm here to tell you about one of the most exciting projects in America today, the East Coast Greenway. It's an idea that I think LeBron James and Albert Einstein would agree on. I'll tell you what I mean by that after a little context. 22 years ago, a handful of Greenway advocates in Boston and New York and DC decided they want to take what they're doing on the local level, that passion for linear parks, and bring it to the next level. They decided they would establish an intercity greenway all the way from Maine to Florida for safe biking and walking. So they worked hard. They established this urban sister to the Appalachian Trail. And it's not just set up for recreation, but it was set up for commuting as well. So we could have a long-distance cyclist from Canada to Key West, but we could also foster a safe walk for a mother to go to the store with her napping baby. The founding team established a nonprofit organization, and they brought in and ushered in hundreds of volunteers, and they got going. Fast forward 20 years, and the East Coast Greenway dream is alive and well. We have a full route that several people have ridden end to end on their bicycle, whether they were honeymooners or retirees, or perhaps they were celebrating their 25th wedding anniversary, as we did have a couple doing that. People are exploring the East Coast Greenway. We also have a staff, a small staff, that is coupled with a network of over 20,000 volunteers and followers engaged in the process. So far, we've mobilized hundreds of millions of dollars in public investment to make this dream a reality, to get to 29% complete. Those 800 miles are beautiful stretches that are safe and accessible to everyone, from a toddler to her 90-year-old great-grandparents. And the momentum continues to grow. We have private and public sector growth and involvement that is snowballing now, and it's ready in the years ahead to complete what we've worked so hard to start. Along the East Coast Greenway, more and more people are enjoying the rich history of the Eastern Seaboard, the rich natural beauty and wonder, and the diverse cultures. Our route is not a bypass. Our route goes through the heart of communities so that one can experience the community, the places, and the people at a pace that they can really appreciate. The East Coast Greenway is making this possible. Whether it's in Maine or Florida, we're moving this project forward. Domestic and international tourists are able to enjoy everything from the lobster and moose in Maine all the way down to the alligators and the manatees in Florida. From the best blueberry pie all the way down to the best key lime pie. Today, our East Coast Greenway segments are enjoyed by 10 million visitors. But over 45 million people live along the East Coast Greenway's counties that we're connecting. So I think in the coming decade, we can make it 100 million visits. And that is the scale our nation needs us to move to. That right there happened a year ago. It's a boat that Superstorm Sandy lifted out of the Hudson River and put on the East Coast Greenway in New Jersey. If you look closely there, the writing says, global warming is real. Indeed, climate disruption costs are no longer something that we look at as far off in the future. Last year, Sandy and the historic drought cost our nation's taxpayers over $100 billion. It's time for us to invest in climate solutions that are cost-effective, like active transportation today. Our nation also faces a health crisis. Obesity rates have doubled in the last 20 years. And the American Heart Association estimates that the cost of inactivity is over $200 billion per year. This is something that's serious and demands our action as well. And at the same time, our economy is still recovering from the Great Recession. High unemployment persists, and state and federal safety nets are eroding as lawmakers are focused on cutting back and cutting costs. At the same time, 1 in 6 Americans lives below the poverty line. So we urgently need ways to help them lower their cost of living. That's where the East Coast Greenway comes in. Greenways empower people to lower their transportation costs, lower their health costs, and lower their pollution. Together, we can invest in this cost-effective solution, and we can move our nation forward. But don't just take my word for it. There are many game changers right now and from the past who support this cultural shift underway toward biking and walking. Decades ago, Albert Einstein was riding his bike as he thought about some of the most complex theories people have ever pondered. And today, LeBron James often rides his bike to practice and to games, as you may have seen in a recent Nike ad. And they're not the only ones. Steve Jobs also has some positive words to say about the bicycle. After noting that the bike is the most efficient transportation tool, he said this quote, "The computer is the equivalent of a bicycle for our minds." But we can't just push people to start riding and to start walking because we don't yet today have the infrastructure for them to do it safely. We want them to enjoy the efficiency, the mental health, the physical health elements, but we have to build an East Coast Greenway so that they can enjoy it. The greenways we're building are the gateways to an active life. For a child, it can be the place where they first learn how to ride a bike. And for a retiree, it can be a place where you relearn and develop habits to establish and to live a healthy and sustainable life. Personally, I would like to complete this greenway by the time my sons graduate college. That gives me perhaps 20 years. We'll see how it goes. As I mentioned before, these big projects take strong investments. But we estimate the cost of completing the remaining 2,000 miles of East Coast Greenway from Maine to Florida is less than the cost of a recent bridge over the Potomac River. And not just that, the CEO of Blue Cross Blue Shield of North Carolina, Brad Wilson, recently cited a study that found that for every dollar invested in bike and pedestrian infrastructure, $3 is saved in reduced health costs. That's a return on investment we should take advantage of. And that doesn't even take into account all the other great benefits from the reduced costs from fuel bills going lower, pollution costs lower, and much more. Since we're here in North Carolina, I want to make the case that we can take the lead. We were first in flight. We know how to transform the transportation system. And it's time for us to lead again and establish a model greenway system. That is the mayor of Raleigh, Mayor McFarland, and she often cites greenways as a key recruitment tool for companies to come to the city, like Red Hat and others. Now, can't we do that on a larger level? And how do we get all communities to continue to invest? They're going to need it. You need to compete because everyone's moving forward on greenways. So if you're going to compete for the best employers, the best employees, and the world's tourists, we've got to keep moving. There are great signs of progress. Over the last 20 years, active trips, like biking and walking, have tripled in the United States. And over the last several years, vehicle miles driven has gone down. But we have a long way to go to catch up with our Western Europe peers, and for us to achieve the scale that our Earth, that our health, and that our economy needs, we need to triple those active trips again. The East Coast Greenway is transforming communities all the way from Maine to Florida. From our largest city, where Mayor Bloomberg is investing in safer biking and walking, to our small towns, like Simsbury, Connecticut, where they have recently established a bike share, and they are investing in completing the East Coast Greenway in their community. The East Coast Greenway Alliance needs you. Together, we can build an American treasure for ourselves and for all future generations. We can foster sustainable, healthy, and a prosperous world. Thank you.